So I'm here in the middle of the Israeli Arava desert. Take a look at this landscape. Deep in the distance over there is a community of people who have chosen to live off the grid. So I thought this would be the perfect place to speak with someone who has lived as off the grid as you can get. Nicole Stott's a former NASA astronaut, and she spent 104 days on the International Space Station. And she's returned to our beautiful planet Earth with some remarkable perspectives about life. So let's take a listen.
A lot of what you do since having come back from the International Space Station is trying to encourage us Earthlings here on Earth to better appreciate our planet and the way that we relate to each other. So from up there, miles away from the Earth on which we walk, how did you reflect on humanity and our relationship with the Earth while you were in space?
Wow, I think, it's interesting because to me, I got there, as an astronaut, you're all working the technical stuff, right? The complex side of things, understanding, how the rocket ship works and how you're going to get there to space safely, which is a really complex thing to do. How we even live and work on this space station that we've built. I mean, we've essentially built this mechanical system so that we can, mimic what Earth does for us naturally, right? This life support system that we have there, just so we can, even have people there. We got to do that first, right? You can't do any science without that. And then how we get safely home on these spaceships and all this complex stuff. And in the end, I might sound like maybe too simple. I don't know, but I just found that from the very beginning, throughout the entire experience, and even now, the stuff that really sticks with me is the simple idea that, oh my gosh, we live on a planet, right? We're all Earthlings. Only border that really matters, thin blue line of atmosphere that blankets and protects us all. And that, of all of it, is what has stuck with me. It's what I want to share with everyone. It's what I want people to understand, that, under that blue, veil, that very thin blue veil that protects us, we're all here on the same planet. Everything about us and all that surrounds us is interconnected and interdependent in ways we don't even, that we don't even consider in our day-to-day lives. Mm-hmm. And I think that's it, regardless of what work I'm doing, working on a book, doing artwork myself with kids, all of it, speaking, that's ultimately what I want people to walk away with is, hey, you live on a planet, you're an Earthling, only border that matters. You need to live like crew of Spaceship Earth.
I know, but what really baffles me is that, this was your, night and day working for NASA with the concept of the fact that we live on a planet. And it took you actually having to leave the planet to get that appreciation. And I wonder why. And I wonder then, if it took you doing that to have to leave to get it, how we're expected to kind of have that appreciation.
Well, I think that's why it's important for me to share the experience, right? It's important. And it's not just important for me as a person who went to space to do that, but it's why I love doing podcasts like this too, where there's an interest. You've been looking into things that are like this in, one way or another throughout the conversations you're having, right? And I think people need to know that you don't have to go to space to have this understanding, right? A lot of what we're experiencing right now, I hope people walk out of their houses one day with this understanding of, oh my gosh, I was having to live in a way that was my job as a crew member. So I could take care of my family and myself and all of my crewmates on the planet, so we all would survive at the end of this, right? And I think that's really what it ultimately comes down to, is how do we look at the things that are around us, perhaps, I would love it if everybody thought planet, Earthling, thin blue line, but I don't even know if it has to go that far. I think it just needs to go, perhaps as far as your backyard, to where you look at and you're just in awe. You're just wondering, how does this all work? How is the way I exist here even happening. And then I don't know, when you do that, I don't know how you can't look around you and think, oh my gosh, and you know, my next door neighbor and the person on the other side of the planet, how does this all tie together, and be in awe of it, you know?
Totally. I totally know. And, you know, as you say, you don't have to leave the planet Earth to have that awe, because I definitely live with that awe. But I wonder, the fact that you feel like you do, you need to communicate that. And many of us do, the ones that are sitting here going, can you believe how this is all working? And you know, also you're talking about the current pandemic and how we can see how interrelated we all really are. And, you know, how reliant we are on each other, not only as humans in how we cooperate, but with the systems and the natural laws of the earth. So what perspective do you think we're missing that prevents many of us from appreciating our planet in the way that you can?
You know, I think it's there's this idea of separation, perhaps, you know, that leads to connectivity, leads to understanding of connection. And but I also think that, you know, there's this kind of two-sided idea of separation. You know, most of us in our day-to-day lives, we're separating from nature in some way, right? You know, we're going to our job, we're sitting at our computers, we're even doing this kind of thing, and you know, we're working on our work, right? Which for some reason we've kind of separated that from, oh, this special thing that's nature around me, right? And I think that separation has not been so good for us, you know, that we haven't in our daily lives been able to just incorporate the awe and wonder of the nature around us, of what allows us to survive into our daily lives. And, you know, when you go to space, you've got all this mechanical stuff around you, and what you want to do, I mean, even when you know you're supposed to be cleaning the toilet or working on a science experiment, what you really want to do as a human being is have your face in that window and be looking at Earth and appreciating this totally new perspective of, you know, this home that we share. And I remember feeling like, wow, I'm the furthest away I might ever be again, you know, from our planet.
Wow.
And yet I was feeling more connected to everything and everyone down there below me than I sometimes had, like you say, when I was right down here in the middle of it. And I think it would be, you know, it would be wonderful if everyone could just, if everybody had the luxury, actually, I guess, you know, some of us, and I feel very fortunate to be comfortable, to be with my family. And I know that's not true for everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And even in the, you know, in the direst experiences with all of this, or just life in general, you know, my hope is that people can just like lift their heads up every now and then and just look in awe of what's around them. Take the time to be still, you know, with that, and know that it's part of just who and where we are and how we even survive.
And I wonder what your case is for that awe. Why do you wish that people could have that awe? What does it give you extra, as opposed to going about your life and ignoring what's making this all go around and happen?
Yeah. Well, I think it provides us with a connection that this thing can't give us, right? You know, it's funny to me. I look at this and I'm a bit in awe of this too. You know, wow, how can all that information about everything that was ever possibly known or whatever be in this little thin thing for the interweb? But somehow with that, we don't really get a sense of our interconnectivity. Right. I think that's the differentiating thing, is between connection and interconnectivity. And I think what the allowing yourself to just be in awe of the nature around you, of the planet that supports our life, is that there's a bit of a mystery to it. There's an unknown. There's this challenge. There's this curiosity, and wow, you know, I'm here, I'm alive, I'm surviving, and there's so much around me that I know I don't understand.
Of course, of
You know, the scientists are working hard to continue to understand it, right? And then you start thinking about it, it's kind of this zoom out or zoom in thing. Okay, I'm on a planet. All right, well, this planet's in this solar system, in this universe, perfectly placed distance from this sun, you know, that keeps me alive. And the mystery of it, I think, is what opens us up to hopefully not a frustration about that, but just a wonder of, wow, this is really significant. This is impressive. We might be on this tiny little, pale blue dot, this dot of a planet in the grander scheme of the universe, but holy moly, we're at this perfect distance from the sun that's allowing us to survive. Let's appreciate that, and figure out how to understand that we really all are all or should be not just passengers but crew on spaceship Earth.
Totally. And I want to get into that in terms of what you witnessed in terms of global cooperation in space, and how you'd like to see that happening here on Earth. But you're talking about the case for awe, the case for looking at how this all works, and your answer was because it provides a heightened sense of interconnectivity. And I understand that to be not only between us as between each other, but also in terms of our relationship with the natural processes that are happening in Earth, in the world, in the natural world, that we're not separate to it. And we oftentimes see ourselves as humans as kind of feeding off the Earth, letting the Earth work for us, rather than seeing this symbiotic relationship that we continue to serve each other. And I wonder whether you ever refer to nature and what we see in the natural world to kind of give you insight into us as humans and our human experience and what happens for us, or if that's a little bit too spiritual, airy-fairy for you.
No, I maybe without even realizing it, I guess, because I think that, like for me, for example, when I paint, right? I painted when I was on the space station. I had this watercolor kit I brought with me. I could have painted, what my crew quarters looked like on the station. I could have painted the exercise equipment or some science experiment or something. But the thing I wanted to paint was that view out the window, right? Because on that space station, with the exception of maybe a couple plant experiments or something, there's not a lot, or the human beings, there's not a lot of nature inside the space station. It's a very mechanical kind of air-conditioned room kind of place. So the nature for you was this view, this like stunning, glowing planet out the window that it was like a transcendent experience. I mean, really, I had to set the timer on my watch if I went to the window during the day, because I'd be there for a full, 90-minute lap of the planet without even, realizing it. It's the closest thing to meditation that I've ever experienced, is that, transcendence of looking out the window. And I think it's because it's not just a view. It's like you're feeling it, your experience. It's like it's getting in you. It becomes part of you, right? And I think the same, I'm sitting here looking out my window at the water in my backyard. It's the same kind of thing. You immediately feel, at least I do, that this is an extension of me. It's not this separate thing from me. It's this extension of me. And, that same thing can happen when I'm looking out my back window or I'm looking out the window of a spaceship. And, what are we? I don't know, 90-something% water, right? Our bodies are, I'm looking at it out my window. And I start to go, okay, how does that all, work together? And I don't know.
I don't think any of us do. That's what we're trying to
do. But I get that. It just is, you just get, right? I'm a rambler, sorry, but you get that there's this connection to how, that needs to be in good shape, that water I'm watching flow through my window, for me to be healthy. But there's, there's this, I think most astronauts will tell you the view of Earth is one where, you kind of, you look at it and you're just like, man, this place is alive. It's like we think of ourselves as the ones being alive, right? But the planet as a whole looks like this living, breathing system. And my most vivid memory of that was watching thunderstorms at night on Earth, because I grew up in Florida. I'm in Florida now, and we get a lot of thunderstorms. And I always thought of them like, oh, that's just the storm that's over the top of me. And when it's gone, it's gone, But in fact, when you look at it from space, it's like these little like tentacles of neurons firing, this light moving across the planet from Florida to Africa. And that I think was my first like reality check of, holy moly, there is not a single thing down there that isn't connected in one way or another.
Yeah, completely. I'm getting just rushes over me as you're speaking, because oh yes, I completely can somehow appreciate that in a way that obviously you've had a much more physical experience of that dawning. But I oftentimes look to the processes in nature to help me try and understand my life and the processes that we go through as humans, because I have that understanding that, okay, well, if these things are all connected, then we're not separate to it, then we must be able to try and find some understanding for what's happening with us. And, I've worked for many years as a journalist and working in the news, talking about a lot of the violence and the pain and the destruction and the cruelty and the conflict between us as humans. And it to the point that I actually took a long break from news because of how much I just couldn't wrap my head around what was happening to us as a humanity. And I was feeling physically affected by it. And spent about 8 months sitting there going, what is this all? Why is this happening like this? As you said, I'm very fortunate to be, Nicole Stott has had this particular education and growing up in this particular country, and it can be connected to my family, while there are others on the planet living a very different experience. Yet there's an interconnectedness, and there's this, I wonder why this was my fate or luck or whatever came out for me this way and not someone else. So a very long dissertation to lead up to my question about something you talk about, the fact that life wouldn't even be possible for us on this planet if not for a very violent and chaotic process that happened on a cosmic level. And that violence allowed for life. And that really hit me as I was kind of going through my dealing and reckoning with what happens on the planet.
Under immense heat and pressure, the rocks began to build our planet. There seems to be nothing subtle about the way Earth was built. It would almost be like building a space station with a sledgehammer.
And I wonder if you have anything to say to that. If you look at those processes of the necessity for violence and destruction in nature, and if you see that as perhaps just a necessary force that exists between us as humans and our lot and how we relate.
Yeah, that's a really difficult question, I think, because I don't know, that's kind of where I want to separate what nature has to do, on a cosmic level from what we need to do to survive, to grow, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'm an optimist, first of all. This is so, but I'm also a realist, right? I know that there's probably not likely going to be a time where these kinds of things that we don't want happening are happening somewhere. But from a human level, where we see that happening, right? It usually ends up being about a resource or a piece of land, which I guess is a resource too. And, that land is valuable because it has clean water on it, or, trees. I mean, whatever the resource is. And that's where I think that this model of how we've worked in space really is so important, because it's scale, right? But how is it that we, for the last 20 years, have been able to work peacefully, successfully on this mechanical system in space? A crew of 6 that represents all 15 of these countries, and tens of thousands of people down on the ground that are part of that program, working to make it happen, to help, keep the crew on board alive. And recognizing that on that space station, really our number one priority is life support. Is there enough clean drinking water for everyone on the crew? Is the air clean enough for all of the crew to breathe, to survive? Are we able to generate the electricity from the sun? It's the best example of living off the grid, that you can find. But how do we do that so deliberately on this football field sized mechanical system in space, and not realize that the same kind of closed loop system here on Earth requires that same diligence, that same attentiveness, that same proactive management for the sake of the whole crew.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it comes down to the basic necessities, right? You know, water, air, food, place to live.
Right.
You know, I mean, and those are the things that, you know, like the equitability of that, the basic needs being met for humanity. I don't know, that seems to be, that's where our major conflict comes
It
from.
is. It's the
I
big
guess
question mark. Yeah, I'm wondering because, you
Yeah.
know, it sounds, I mean, wouldn't we all love to be able to replicate what happens on the International Space Station, which makes sense when you have, you know, one mission and you all need to survive and, you know, but there's 10 of you as opposed to what we're dealing with on this planet. You said you're an optimist, but perhaps what perspective or what attitude are we not getting right that we're not able to see the possibility for that scalability, and we haven't since the beginning of time?
Yeah, you know, maybe from the beginning of time, we didn't realize that, you know, there was a point, I guess, where we didn't even realize we lived on a planet, right? And now we do. There's no denying that. I think, you know, even in the farthest reaches of what we might think are the farthest reaches, you know, plastic gets there, people are, you know, we know what exists there, right? There's no denying it. And our like mutual habitation of the planet, you know? And yeah, I mean, to me, it's the thing that I think is really important for us, you know, you get it, right? So it's important for us to be out there communicating it to, it's why I love art, right? You know, you can engage with audiences that you might not have otherwise spoken to, and whether they like your art or not, oh, I might be able to talk to them about this space station that is the greatest model for how we should be living and working here on Earth, right? As a person who is blessed to have seen, I mean, I saw this work. I saw it work on a space station with countries that, you know, even today aren't necessarily, you know, getting along all the time. But I think that the way that we've worked together in space is allowing us to temper how we behave with each other down here. Right. And so, I don't know, just that model of peaceful, successful, greater good, honestly, common mission is, you know, is what makes it work. And there's rules of engagement. It's not like there's not rules about how we behave together up there, how we use the water, how we generate the electricity. All of that has, you know, rules that you have to work within. And knowing that the mission is important to all of us, we know we have to do those things first, right? We have to make sure we don't get a hole in the metal hull, you know, which is like, that's like our thin blue line, right? It's the thing that's protecting us from that deadly vacuum of space. And yeah, it almost is. I think the problem is it might almost sound too simple, right? Oh, just do what we're doing on the space station down here on Spaceship Earth, right? Just seems too simple. And I think like we've done to go to space, you know, I mean, we've proven that as human beings, we can come together and do really, really complex things. And I'm gonna show you, I usually show this to kids, but it's like, it's, like it speaks to adults too. But it's like this motto that my very favorite mentor, boss that I had at Kennedy Space Center as an engineer when I was first starting out as a young engineer working in the space program. And his motto for us was, here, I'll show you, like, here's how we can, not why we can't, right? And I was Jay Honeycutt, great guy. And I think that's what we applied. We applied that as engineers, as different space programs coming together to make these things in space work. And I think we just have to put that same mentality to work for, you know, our planetary challenges as well. It's a matter of deciding, really. And that's
Totally.
too.
No, I mean, listen, Nicole, I agree with you completely. And, you know, I mentioned to you before we had this chat that I was the master of ceremonies for the International Space Conference. And I met so many people that have had similar experiences to you, and I just left there absolutely in awe of these humans. And, you know, astronauts tend to have this beautiful attitude, them and their families. And there are pockets of people that are doing the same kind of work in their own way here on Earth, that we wish we could scale all of these models that are working together with common missions for the greater good. But I seem to wonder what the people that aren't doing that work are missing. What is it about the inability to see the interconnectedness and the necessity for us to work together, that there's a lack mentality or a me mentality that prevents that attitude?
Yeah, there might, I mean, there might be a couple reasons. I mean, one of them might just be that, you know, hey, making money is the motivation, you know, in one way or another. The other is, and maybe that's part of it too, is that those basic level, you know, of needs for survival just aren't there for those people. And they don't have the bandwidth, I mean, using that term, to look beyond how am I going to get clean drinking water and food for my family, right? I can't imagine. I think that would be a real struggle to start thinking, oh, I live on a planet and this thin blue line of atmosphere. And I mean, it would be hard to reach out for that. I don't cut slack to the people who are just all about making money, though. I don't cut slack. I mean, to me, that's, you know, that's where I think it's our responsibility again to, you know, I have a person I've become friends with, Mark Tursek, who is the CEO of the Nature Conservancy, right, for about 10 years. And, you know, this is a man who, you should interview him. This is a man who was a senior vice president at Goldman Sachs for years, right? And, you know, went off into, you know, long story short, went off into nature with his family, had this moment like, hey, I need to apply all that I know to how do we conserve nature? How do we repair, you know, and became the head of Nature Conservancy, and applying these same ideas of how we should be conserving nature to the solutions for businesses, trying to get businesses to think, hey, my long-term viability depends on me having clean water, depends on the air being clean. I won't even have customers if people are dying off because they can't breathe, you know, I mean, that, you know, that kind of thing. But and showing like big corporations that, hey, your viability depends on the, you know, sustainability, the quality of nature around you too, for a long term. And
because I also wonder about that, like looking at, say, for example, when I visited Bali and I spoke to a man who told me about their attitude, they had a bit of an issue with garbage removal, just household garbage. And they will take their garbage and they'll just pour it out into the drain, because when the water comes, it washes it down and it's no longer there. And it ends up in someone else's backyard, not my problem. And and we kind of have this attitude here on Earth, not only in terms of right now, if I don't see it, it's not my problem, it's their problem, great. But in terms of the case for why should I, you know, limit my enjoyment of taking what I want from life and from the planet? Why should I conserve nature if I'm not going to be here in 30 years? I'm not going to be here to see the ramifications on my grandchildren or so what's your case for those people to almost encourage them to care about it now, even though it might not affect them in their lifetime?
Yeah, you know, I don't think I've ever met somebody, I think you said it, you know, their children, their grandchildren. I don't think I've ever really met anyone, even if they're doing what you say, you know, they're, you know, still throwing their trash out the window. I mean, I'm old enough to remember as a kid where I would watch people throw their McDonald's bags out there. I mean, litter was just like something that happened. And then there was this like revolution about it. And, you know, you don't, I mean, that is an oddity now, right? To see somebody throw something out their window.
I live in the Middle East. I don't know. It's happening.
Well, yeah, but it is. And it's, well, and then there's awareness too, you know, like what happened.
There's definitely
care, I guess. Yeah. But it's interesting because I don't think I've ever really met anybody who said, yeah, I really would like Earth to be in worse shape when my children are, you know, raising their kids, or, you know, I don't think, I mean, I really hope people don't feel that way. Like it's really a deliberate, yeah, I want this place to, you know, be more polluted, and, you know, the water to not be clean, and the floods to have risen, you know, when my kids and grandkids are, I think everybody really and truly at heart wants a better future for, you know, for their children. And, yeah, I mean, I hold hope that that is true. That is
no,
true.
it makes sense when you think about it that way. Perhaps there just isn't enough attention on the unsustainable ways that perhaps we're living. I mean, you've talked about this, and it's well known, and we're seeing it happening currently, about the fact that, you know, we're saying, you know, we're destroying our Earth, kind of a thing. But at the end of the day, what we're saying is we're creating a space that's unsustainable for us to live in. Because at the end of the day, the Earth will win out. We're not the ones that are going to win. It will be the ones that gets rid of us. So why do you think, from a selfish point of view, why are we failing to grasp that it's like, you know, this isn't about, oh, the poor Earth. It's about, you're not going to be able to survive this if you continue to treat the Earth this way.
Yeah, I don't know. You know, I don't know if the narrative does it need to become the selfish, you know, self-motivated, you know, narrative? If it does, let's do it, because if it'll work, let's do it. But I think that, you know, for so long we've been, you know, when we had the 50th anniversary of Earth Day, you know, this year, right? And you think back on that, you know, in this last 50 years, there aren't people really, you know, at least in where I see, throwing stuff out their windows anymore, right? And Clean Air Act, you know, the air is cleaner in a lot of places than it, you know, ever was. If we'd continued down that path, I can't even imagine what I'd be looking out my window right now, right? But yeah, the planet has survived a lot worse than us, right? You know, we are a blip on the, you know, the timeline of, you know, the overall history of the planet, when all those collisions were going on and causing Earth, you know, to be formed. And I think the problem is that we don't, like you said, we don't think about it from the standpoint of, hey, there are particular things about this place around me that I need to maintain in order for me to survive, which also then results, thankfully, in all the other creatures being able to survive as well, right? And whoop, there's one. And and yeah, maybe the narrative needs to change to, you know, save our life support system or save ourselves, because I don't believe the Earth is deliberately trying to get rid of us. You know, I think all the time it's trying to repair itself. I mean, we're seeing it now, you know, air is clearing up, you know, we're not having as much activity. So it's really working hard to clean it up. And it just not, you know, just won't be on a scale of time that will keep us alive if we keep doing what we're doing, right? You know, a million years from now, it might be able to recover, you know, even 200 years, it might be able to recover, but that doesn't necessarily keep us here.
I want to kind of bring the conversation now to a concept that you just brought up, which is time. And I know that when you're in space, you have a different concept and a different appreciation of time. You said it takes, you know, 90 minutes to do a spin around the Earth. So what can you share with us that will give us a greater sense of peace or appreciation in our short, tiny individual blips of lives?
Yeah, I think, I don't know, I always tend to come back to the awe and wonder thing. And, you know, I had some of us had this opportunity to look down on the Earth, right? To look down and see this beautiful, glowing, you know, life support system in the kind of a technical way to look at it. But I would encourage people to go outside and look up, right? Look up and think about, I mean, I'm doing it right now. I can see the moon out the window, this beautiful blue sky. And when I look at it, I have to remind myself that that doesn't go on forever, right? We look up and we have this tendency to think of this blue sky that surrounds us, just that it goes on forever, right? And it really is this thin, beautiful veil that I don't know, gives us the opportunity to appreciate, you know, who and where we are in space together, um, and how we should be treating each other and respecting this place that supports our life. Um, you know, you brought up this question of, you know, kind of the significance of things, of us, you know, as you know, as human beings on this planet, and you know, why should I care that my children or my grandchildren, or you know, for life that I won't be here for, why should it matter to me? And I think the mystery is important. I have this memory of Nat Geo, you know, the National Geographic magazines, right? Usually a lot will have the like the pull-out poster in the middle of them, and I mean, as a kid, that's what I wanted to see. Immediately, I would open the magazine and I just like, look, what's the poster this time? And I have this memory of a space version, you know, and the poster was the known universe. And you pulled it out, and it was this big white sheet of paper with this oval drawing of the universe. And like we always do, you know, you find the "you are here" point, you know, it's like, okay, where's Earth? Where's our solar system in this big, beautiful, you know, oval picture, right? And I don't know, I was probably 10 years old, you know, sitting on my bedroom floor with this folded out on the floor and looking at it, thinking, wow, that's so cool. And oh, you know, this is the universe, and look how pretty that is, and all this stuff. And then getting to the edge of the drawing of the oval, right? Wow, this is the no, what is, you know, even at 10, I think you realize, wow, so what's all this white stuff around the known universe? Is that the unknown universe? You know, is that heaven? Is that what they, you know, the teachers in school are telling me what infinity is? I mean, what is that, you know? And looking at it, and then just like looking up and thinking, okay, so how far would the known universe, it's like out the window, down the street, and that it's just okay. I even then I like just concluded it's okay for us not to know necessarily, right? How far that goes. But the fact that we can look at this drawing and just even see who and where we are, and how, I mean, we go to Saturn, right? And we send Cassini out there, and it sends all these cool pictures of Saturn back to us and stuff. And we learn all kinds of things about Saturn. But what is the one picture we're always looking for? We're looking for the picture that has the dot of light that's us in it. We want to know. I mean, I get goosebumps thinking about it. We want to know how we're connected to everything else that's around us. And that's not just us, you know, my neighbor next door, the person on the other side of the planet, but it's us in the grander scheme of everything. And I think that's what we all have to kind of come back to. And that's why I try to simplify it. You know, for me, my kindergarten brain is, okay, I live on a planet. I'm an Earthling. I better respect that. And, you know, the only border, that thin blue line. And if I can keep that in my mind every day and try to associate it with the decisions I make, I mean, I think I will make better choices.
Completely. And you can take it as far as you want, you know, use the words, you know, infinity and the unknown, and we're all looking, we're all searching, we're all like trying to grasp, and we, you know, I can't say we all, but a vast majority of us are. And something else that resonated with me when you say, you know, you look down and you see, that's my home. This whole planet, that's my home, and then you can expand it to, you know, the whole universe, etc., and the ongoingness of it. And then there's also this spiritual search that you said, you know, it felt almost close to a meditation to be hovering above and having that bird's eye view. And I know that when it comes to, say, meditation, you're almost getting that sense within yourself of some infiniteness that we can't even touch, that happens when we just close our eyes and go to a space that's even from inside. I mean, it's just, or wherever it is. I mean, it just absolutely boggles my mind. So I'm with you in that awe. And that's, I think, why we've come to talk, to kind of chew the fat on that.
But I apologize. I mean, I don't have the answers, you know, that's the thing. I think that's part of what's important about these conversations, is it doesn't necessarily rely on the answer for us to kind of push out of ourselves. You talk about that meditation, that look at it's almost like you get this sense of you don't know where you end, and like the air around you starts and the water and all. I mean, it's like you just become a part of this greater whole. And we all need to do that. We all need to, make that connection, at least.
Totally,
yeah.
totally. And you know, I asked you to make the case for that, but I mean, and I think you've just done it so beautifully, because it just does, it supercharges your experience on this earth. And a lot of the time, you know, when we're looking for these hits of chemicals in our brain that we get from this outside world, you can really just do it by like sitting down and tapping into that and get that all the time. It's a really simple search at the end of the day, as much as it feels like beyond us. And I wanted to just ask you before I let you go, you have behind you lots of wonderful gadgets and pictures, and you were the first person to paint in space. And I want to talk to you about that, about, you know, the interplay that you see between science and art, and why that's become an important mission of yours.
Well, I mean, I don't know that that I ever really thought about it that way. I think it was part of me just in general, and I didn't even realize it. Like, oh, you know, there's art, there's science, you just do it kind of thing. It didn't seem like there should be these two separate paths. I think painting in space gave me it gave me the time to think about, wow, this is really cool. You know, I'm doing something really, really special by being in space and doing this work that, I mean, we haven't talked about, but I mean, really and truly all about improving life on Earth. You know, we don't go to space just to have fun. And, you know, I mean, it's about work that's about improving life on Earth. And the opportunity to paint there, the paint here, I'll grab something. So this is just a print of the painting I did in space. I know there's a lot of glare. It's just kind of like a wave. Looks like a kid's drawing, really, but
That's amazing.
It's so that's you know, when you're painting with watercolors in space, you know, you're not dipping your brush into a cup of water, because water floats. So there's little floating balls of water that you dip your brush into.
Yeah.
And, you know, you can't paint in front of the window and paint what you're seeing out the window, because by the time you get the brush to the paper, you know, at 5 miles a second, it's already gone. You can't do that. So I had to print, you know, I printed out a picture of what I wanted to paint. And when I was choosing that, right, I'm like, you know, what do I pick? What do I pick? And this picture that I'd taken of this tiny little chain of islands on the northern coast of Venezuela called Las Rocas. And to me, it looked like somebody had already had reached their hand down and painted a wave on the surface of the ocean. I'm like, okay, I got to paint that. And it just became, in the grand scheme of things, it became that experience of, like, I think putting the human in human spaceflight, you know, when we paint there, when we play musical instruments, when we take pictures of Earth. I mean, those are things you don't have to do when you're an astronaut in space, but as a human being, you want to do them, right? So I thought, in my next mission after astronaut, it's like, how am I going to share the experience in a unique way? And I kept coming back to that painting in space, kind of my, you know, own personal memory of what it was like to be there, and how could I use art to share that with people who might not even know we have a space station, right? People need to know that the way we're working there. And then I think that it's an opportunity to communicate about what I saw and experienced in a way that hopefully allows people to establish their own connection to the planet, you know, appreciating Earth as our life support system, to the Earthlings that they share it with. And I really thought that was going to be enough for me, right? And then I had, you know, a couple of my friends at the Johnson Space Center who knew I was using art as a communication tool, introduced me to a gentleman named Ian Sion, who was a director, founder of the Art and Medicine program at a hospital in Houston. And we got together and started working on these projects where we would bring kids together from around the world to create their artwork that then would be put together into these beautiful art spacesuits. And, you know, the really cool thing about it is the company that makes our real spacesuits, ILC Dover, they're the ones who take the kids' artwork and sew it together into these, you know, these suit covers for us. And then the kids can see how their artwork has come together with other kids from around the world. And these are kids primarily that are in, like, pediatric cancer centers or hospitals or undergoing treatment, or we've expanded even to working with children in refugee centers around the world. Our last project, we had over 45 countries involved. And our project that we're working on now, we're looking to get kids from every country on the planet, and we want children from everywhere. I mean, we're all in isolation now. These children are all dealing with some of the same kinds of things that a child in a hospital would, and we want them to, to bring their artwork together too. But yeah,
it's amazing.
I'm a rambler. I'm sorry.
Not at all. I mean, listen, you're in good company. That was really, that was really amazing and such an enriching conversation, and everything I'd hoped it would be and more. And I just want to kind of wrap by kind of tying in what you have shared, that sometimes you have this experience where you can't see where you start and where you end, and the air around you starts, and vice versa in that relationship. And I think where I come back to is that every person I speak to in this format, no matter what they've seen or no matter what they've been through, the amount of success they've had, the amount of suffering they've been through, they all land at a particular place, which is the same place. That is that pure joy, happiness, and contentment comes from helping other people.
Totally makes sense. And I look at it, it's like, I mean, I love what you said. It's like it ends up being about like service almost, the joy of giving. And I spoke to a gentleman recently, Scott Harrison. He founded this group called Charity Water. And that was his revelation, was like, wow, the more you give, the more you want to give, right? The more service you do, the more you want to serve. It just becomes this, I mean, almost this need that you have to fulfill too. It's like the satisfaction in life comes from how are you helping others, right? So I think it's what I loved about being in space. It wasn't just about this adventure of floating and flying in space. It was like, wow, I'm part of something that really is meant to improve life on Earth. Mm-hmm. And, that groundedness, I love it. I think it absolutely comes from that. And this, where do we end and other things start? I love the idea of going out. And I think it connects back to this idea of living on a planet and recognizing who and where we are together, is just going out every now and then, take your shoes off and just stand on the earth and think about it. I mean, try to just stand there to the point where you don't even know where the bottom of your foot ends and the start of the grass is and the dirt, and that you just recognize yourself as part of it. And, and then look up and know that you're part of something much bigger. I think it's a bit overwhelming, but it's a really impressive thing, I think, for everyone to do. Yeah.
Nicole, it was so wonderful to speak to you.
Thank you
so much for all of your insights.
Next time I'll do my hair for you.
Oh, I prefer it this way. Raw and real, babe. Raw and real. Yep.
Thank you so much, Tracy, for including me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for your time.
Okay.
Speak to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.